Hey, folks, remember us? It's Trojan Conquest Live right here at the Voice of College Football. We are back. And of course, you didn't have too much time that you missed these two because they kept working through the holidays here at the Voice of College Football USC. But I took some time off. And of course, the show was adjusted in the last few weeks. So we appreciate everybody stopping by and being here. We are back. And we'll be back to our regular Monday slot, I guess, next week. This is the fill-in spot, of course, with the national championship game on Monday night. Next to me, of course, Tim Prangley, who has just done a remarkable job here with our USC show and our channel here at the Voice of College Football. And we will get to an announcement concerning Tim in just a second. Of course, it's also Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire, our number one analyst. Guys, how we doing tonight?
Happy New Year, Mark. And hey, when Christmas and New Year's Day and the national championship game all fall on Monday night, well, that's gonna throw the bumper cars around a little bit. So that's why we've been away. But hey, credit to both you and Tim for pivoting to Tuesday so that we get this show back on the road.
Absolutely. And Matt, you've got some good news for Trojan Nation.
Yeah, first off, I want to give a shout out to my longtime Trojans Wire staff writer, Matt Wadley. He helps do all those listicles so that I can just stay on top of news and kind of do my job as an analyst and overseer. Matt Wadley's been a rock star, but he's now going to be part of, there's going to be a newly launched UCLA Wire site. There's going to be a Washington Husky Wire site. So Matt is graduating to an editor position. That means he gets more pay. That means his career is growing. So like what he did at Trojans Wire, helping me out, it's been a growth point for his sports journalism career. Couldn't be happier for him to graduate to the editor level. And so with him leaving, guess who's now a staff writer at Trojans Wire? Tim Prangley.
That is phenomenal.
So we're part of a tag team now, about to get started. Can't wait to have Tim dropping the knowledge in written form. And of course, that adds to our synchronicity here at the Voice of College Football. We moved Trojans Wire and Voice of College Football, partnering together, building our content base on each side, video and print. So really happy to have Tim aboard to talk USC football. And so with that preamble out of the way, let's go into the news of the day. And Isaiah Rakes, Tim's been talking about it, and he's been totally spot on, of course. USC needs that beef, needs that size, needs that run stuffing presence in the middle, needs to give Bear Alexander some help so that he's not alone, so that he has a helpmate in the middle of that defensive line. We all saw that in the Holiday Bowl. So many good things from the team, but that run defense was very shaky, very limited. You're going into the Big Ten. You need to be able to win 17-10 slugfests in the cold, in the muck, in the mud. This addition from Texas A&M, exactly what the doctor ordered at USC, Tim.
Yeah, when USC is good on defense, and you do need, one thing we have been missing is that guy, that big fire plug in the middle. Now we saw Bear kind of take that role on, but he's not a nose tackle. He's not a zero technique. He's not a guy to be he can be a space eater, but I think you're just wasting his talents there. So they go out and they get Isaiah Rakes, 6'2", 6'1", depending on maybe cleats on or not for different heights. But 327. So the man is big. He's coming over originally from New Jersey, coming from Texas A&M. And I believe he has 1 year. This will be his final year. I'll double check that. But he started 5 games, and Matt just said he played in 36 games his career. So this is the kind of guy that we're gonna like. That's gonna, we had trouble even in the Holiday Bowl stopping that run right up the middle. We've seen it for 2 years straight, being gashed right up the middle. This is a guy that's gonna probably demand a double team, right, or at least gonna be able to fit those gaps in the middle. Allow our linebackers to make plays. So I'm really excited about getting that size. So this is also the second lineman that we're bringing in from Texas A&M, and our third defensive linemen from the SEC. So we're always talking about SEC linemen and our inability to get them through the high school ranks. But now it looks like they're picking them up through the transfer portal. And I mean, like I said, every week, I feel like, when you have like a big guy like a Sean Cody, a big Ced Ellis, a Leonhard, Big Cat Williams, right? Stevie T, we got transferred over from Utah. These are the kind of guys that really do make our defense roll. Big guy, quick twitch, get off, shed blocks, and make plays. And that's what I'm excited to see him do.
Absolutely. And we see that Isaiah Rakes contributed to a defensive front that was considered, despite some of Texas A&M's issues elsewhere, especially on the offensive side with an outdated offense led by first Jimbo Fisher and then bringing in Bobby Petrino. But on the defensive side, talk to anybody that covered SEC football on a regular basis, and especially the front seven, those awesome recruiting classes, they delivered there. They lived up to the reputation. They mounted good defensive front play in the SEC. And so Texas A&M was right up there with Bama, Georgia, probably right behind those two, and considered the third best defensive front in the conference this year.
All right. Well, breaking news. And I doubt that Gabe would screw with me on this kind of a level, but it looks like Jayden Maiava, the 6'4", I think, 220 quarterback from I think it's UNLV, who originally everyone said he's coming to SC. Last minute decides he announces he's going to Georgia. Well, apparently Gabe's telling us right now that Jayden Maiava is now coming back to USC, which is huge. This guy, is athletic, got a strong arm, young. I think he is a true sophomore. Please, someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. And he would be that guy, in case we were to have, worst case, and Miller Moss gets knocked down. This guy is absolutely going to make me feel a lot better about having someone behind him. And I guess our quarterback transfer portal. So that's great. Look, we've been looking to get a backup quarterback, and we've been looking to beef up the interior defensive line. Well, bam, twice today that we've done that. So that's a pretty amazing to hear.
Yeah, that's a substantial pickup. Like USC needed someone, like there was no QB2 in the room. And let me be clear though, this should be Miller Moss's team going into the LSU season opener. I know that we have spring ball, and I know that Lincoln Riley might unearth, some realizations, some discoveries, and maybe Jayden Maiava really impresses. But, there's something to be said for the reality that this team went to the wall for Miller Moss in the Holiday Bowl. And Mark, like we haven't been talking USC with you the past few weeks because of the holidays, because the playoffs semifinals were on Monday night, on New Year's night. So haven't been able to talk to you, but Tim and I have been, discussing, hey, what was the difference between Miller Moss and Caleb Williams in the Holiday Bowl? And it was less about the men themselves. It was more about the team. The team, those other 10 teammates rallied around Miller Moss because they realized, with Caleb Williams, when you see a superstar athlete, you think he'll save the play. He'll figure things out. He'll be Houdini. He'll be David Copperfield. He'll work his way out of trouble. But with Miller Moss, there wasn't that kind of security blanket. There wasn't that subconscious, he'll figure it out kind of inclination. With Miller Moss, the other 10 teammates, first off, they love him, they respect him. But then in terms of on the field, there was no, well, Miller Moss is going to save the day. It was exactly the opposite. It's we have to do our jobs to put our teammate, our friend, Miller Moss in the best possible position to succeed. So you saw 10 guys rallying around their quarterback because they didn't have that subconscious complacency in terms of trusting that the quarterback was going to do everything, solve everything, figure everything out. So precisely because you have 10 teammates so fully trusting Miller Moss, unless something amazing happens, I think that you have to give Miller Moss that starting assignment against LSU because that the whole offense is so invested in him. There is such a great relationship. It's the kind of thing you can't teach. It's the kind of situation as a coach that you can't manufacture. Like the belief, trust, togetherness, those things that coaches yearn for, it's all there. It's right now. It's all there with Miller Moss. You have to at least give him the start. Now, of course, if things go sideways, you have Maiava to plug in. And let's say Miller Moss, gets off on the wrong foot. We have a history at USC of being able to plug in a number 2 who saves the day. Hello, Sam Darnold, 2016, in relief of Max Brown, who got that opening day start in a big neutral site dome game against an SEC team. So it could be the same script, but I do think that it shouldn't be. I mean, there should be competition between Miller Moss and Jayden Maiava in the spring, but I do think that Miller Moss should be treated as the incumbent, and I would like to think that Maiava is being told by Lincoln Riley, hey, if anything happens to Miller Moss, be ready. That kind of a context. But I would like to think that he's coming as the guy who's going to begin as QB2 behind Miller Moss's QB1. There will be competition in spring, but like Miller Moss, deserves that preferred starters treatment, for the LSU game. But then, of course, what happens in that LSU game and for the rest of the season, that is open-ended. So hopefully, this is the best case scenario for USC. Hopefully, in a best case scenario, Miller Moss takes command of the team, does a great job in 2024, and then Maiava is then ready to take the keys of the offense in 2025. One of the things I've been talking with Tim and with our callers on our Friday call-in shows was that USC needed a situation akin to the buffet that Oregon has, with Dillon Gabriel being solidified as the 2024 quarterback, and the Ducks were able to convince Dante Moore to wait a year, and then it's your team, it's your offense in 2025. It's exactly the kind of situation USC needed to create with Maiava now in the fold. That is, or at least it should be, the situation that USC has established in its quarterback room.
Hello, Sam Darnold, but also hello, Keaton Slovis, right? That's how his career got started at USC as well. Now,
I'm JT Daniels. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Matt. You have shaken the cobwebs up here because I have been waiting for weeks to hit you guys up on this very topic, because weeks ago we were discussing looking at the transfer portal list. At one point, it appeared as though Will Howard was going to be a USC Trojan. Most people were pretty happy about that, considering the landscape of the quarterback transfer portal list, losing Caleb Williams. And there was this thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, generally that Miller Moss was an excellent prospect, that he was a 4-star guy, that he had not done anything to light the world on fire, but that he had showed progress and filled in capably in those few mop-up duties. However, the plan A was to go out and get a veteran quarterback who had proven himself at the Power 5 level. So is this more about Miller Moss has suddenly shown us something in the Holiday Bowl, and we really are putting a lot of value in that performance? Or is this more or less the transfer portal list is dried up at the quarterback position, with Cam Ward going to the NFL, Will Howard, Ohio State, and there's nobody on the table, so we have to trust in Miller Moss?
Tim, I'll let you handle that one.
So we didn't go up against some minor league team in the Holiday Bowl. We went up to a pretty good pass rush, decent defense, top 30, 35 defense.
Yep.
And Miller Moss put up those numbers. And really, when you look at 70% passing percentage, there he threw, like, again, something we like to see. Instead of making those offensive linemen, hold or have it, he would throw the ball away. If it wasn't there, he must have dumped 2 to 3 passes on screens that weren't there. He would just throw the ball away. He wouldn't force anything. But at the same time, he was on schedule making great throws. It just seemed like, again, this is going to sound weird. I would love to have Caleb Williams come back. I'd like to have him every single year as USC's quarterback. He's probably the best quarterback I will ever see at USC. But what Miller came in and did was a bit of a shock, because the second half he came in for mop-up duty in the Stanford game. And didn't really impress a lot of SC fans. The offense looked a bit clunky. Now, the problem is everyone goes, that's Miller Moss. Well, maybe it was just the offense in general. Maybe everyone kind of let the foot off the gas. USC was blowing them out. It wasn't really meaningful snaps. But then he steps in to the Holiday Bowl for Caleb, with Caleb in the stands, on the sidelines watching him, and absolutely puts on a clinic. And that, again, Fight on Rusty, if you guys, so go follow Fight on Rusty on Twitter X. He has one of the most hilarious little cartoons where he has like a Grim Reaper, but it's Miller Moss going by and scaring off all these quarterbacks. And one of them was Maiava. But apparently he's come back into the fold. So it's hard to believe that we went from so low. And I wasn't high on Miller. I did like Miller. I want to give him his chance. But he completely changed my complete opinion. Any kind of worries I did have were addressed in that game.
Okay, I'm going to go back and watch the Holiday Bowl. I was having a little family gathering. It was one of these deals where it's on my phone kind of thing, and I'm trying to look as much as I possibly can. I also checked on, guess what? It being a bowl game, I'm guessing that Matt's going to follow my line of thinking because I'm seeing these huge numbers out of Miller Moss, and I know that Louisville can play defense. They did have a really good defense this year, but the first thing I'm thinking is opt-outs. Well, I just checked them out. And to Miller Moss's credit, there is a ton of defensive opt-outs for Louisville, but they are all bit players with like 5 tackles. No major players for Louisville missed that game on the defensive side. So credit to Miller Moss tearing up a pretty good defense.
Yeah, some of the portal guys that weren't going to play got kind of, I guess the word is, processed out. Those were the guys processing out. No one from Louisville was like opting out for the NFL or missing from the starting lineup. Yeah, that was the Louisville team that gave Notre Dame a hell of a lot of trouble in their game.
Yeah, so Mark, in terms of dealing with this quarterback question, you and I have not talked in a few weeks. So yeah, let's go through these plot points. First off, I don't really know yet if Malachi Nelson transferred out because he thought Will Howard was coming to USC or because he knew that Miller Moss was going to be in front of him. I don't know that. It could be both. All right. But it's interesting that when the Will Howard smoke, when that story was gaining traction, you had Malachi Nelson transferring out. So it just makes you wonder if he thought that Will Howard was coming in which case Malachi Nelson was not going to see the field in 2024. But then, Will Howard never actually committed. And so that leads me to believe that when Will Howard paid Lincoln Riley a visit, Lincoln Riley almost certainly, we don't know this for a fact, but we can put 2 and 2 together and be pretty confident in saying this. Lincoln Riley said, you know what, we definitely might need you at USC, but let's watch the Holiday Bowl first. I got to see what I have in Miller Moss. And then after that game, Will Howard, we can then arrive at a pretty clear-cut decision about whether you should come here or you should pursue other opportunities at another school. And then we saw what Miller Moss did. And his last significant action was that second half of the Stanford game that Tim referred to on September 9. And USC struggled to score a touchdown until very late in the game. Miller Moss got a whole half, and it was tough sledding for him. So to see him, make this big, huge leap, and to see freshman receivers, Jacoby Lane, Mekhi Lemon, balling out with Miller Moss and establishing such an instant rapport with him. I mean, this was just so far beyond our expectations. Louisville got up to the 7-0 lead, and it seemed like, oh, here we go again. It seemed like it was going to be just another repeat of the regular season, and then everything turned with USC forcing that turnover, getting to 7-7, completely different game after that. But seeing how well Miller Moss played, number one, seeing how well he connected with freshman wide receivers who are the future of the offense, the future of the team, that number two. And number three, seeing how the whole roster rallied around Miller Moss as a teammate, needing to do their jobs well to put their teammate in position to succeed. I mean, you put all of that together, and Will Howard, could just see that, hey, Miller Moss made his statement. He passed his audition for QB1. So Will Howard pivots to Ohio State. I think we can kind of piece those things together. And just one more footnote about Malachi Nelson, since obviously he's a point of interest. Isn't it curious that he was linked to Miami, but then goes to Boise State? And what does that tell us? And I wrote about this at Trojan's Wire over the weekend. I think that's a pretty clear signal that the NIL money was not his focus. He wanted to play. He wanted to go someplace where he would not have a spring battle for a position. He did not want to have to deal with another battle with an equal competitor for a starting spot. He wanted to be handed a starting spot. Going to a place where he knew he'd be the guy. He's going to be the guy in Boise under a first-year head coach, Spencer Danielson. So, like, that's how much Malachi Nelson wanted to play. Like, he goes to a rookie head coach. He leaves Lincoln Riley. Again, that tells you it's not about the money. It's not about, the bright lights. He wants to play. So that kind of fills in a gap with Malachi Nelson in terms of understanding his thought process. And so with Miller Moss, being excellent in the Holiday Bowl and the Will Howard smoke from December, pretty easy to see why Malachi Nelson ultimately made the decision to transfer. He wanted to play, and he didn't want to have a spring battle on his hands.
Speaking of also wanting to play right away, one of them, a true freshman, which Tackett Curtis, I believe he's landed at Wisconsin. Again, best of luck to them. And also a crowd favorite, one of my favorites, guy that battled. I don't care what anyone says about this young man. He'll always have that memorable interception to save that UCLA game last year. Corey Foreman looks like also will be playing football at San Diego State. And I really hope all these guys just go with it where they go, play right away and ball out. Because these young men have worked really hard. And I really just wish them all the best.
And that's the tack that I hope most fans on social media take. And we know better, unfortunately, that many of them take this personally. But these are young men making the best decisions for them. Yeah.
Oh, and really quickly, we're at the 20-minute mark. We're about 170, and our stats show us that about every 20 minutes, the stuff turns over. So if you guys could do us a huge favor, hit that like button. Also, we're trying to get to 5,000. We're like about 120 away. Make sure you hit right here. You got that subscribe button. If you're not subscribed, click that subscribe button and make sure you hit the notification bell, because if we do get big news, we just happen to be on with Rakes today and then also getting the news about Maiava. But we will go live, Matt and I, for our call-in show, and we'll talk to you guys. We love to hear you guys celebrate. We also here to commiserate on some nights, many nights last season. So make sure you
we got used to that one.
Yeah, it was a bad run for a while, but now there's more of a celebration mood. So especially with Lynn hire and everything that's going on in defense. So let's just keep the positivity going.
And while we're pointing out some destinations, I got to say, Matt had me captivated a couple hours ago as I was checking out one of the things that Matt does, as well as anybody out there, is following the possible dominoes. And he got me lost in a scenario of college coaching and NFL coaching changes and what could happen if these dominoes fell in this direction, but what if they fell in this direction? And that's the way, look at some of the segments that Matt and I have posted here as a YouTube channel member here at the Voice of College Football. You'll see we've gone through some of those scenarios from historical references that are fascinating, and they will be once again in play in the offseason regarding some of the top college coaches, college football, and how that will affect the NFL and vice versa. Really good, really good read.
Mark, thank you. So yes, that's I think the really hot Big Ten topic. USC football, we're now fully in a Big Ten existence. Like the Pac-12 football world, that's done. The Washington, Michigan Monday night, last Pac-12 football game ever. So it's now we're wearing that Big Ten helmet. And Mark, so you are a Big Ten expert. I mean, you're a college football expert. But you have a podcast called Big Ten Paradigm, and of course your knowledge of Ohio State is prodigious. I'd put that up against any college football expert on the planet. So let me put it to you: should Ohio State make a run at Mike Vrabel and calling his agent, feeling it out, seeing if he'd be willing to take the job in Columbus and push Ryan Day out?
Well, I got to say that after reading your work, Matt, I know where you stand on your comparison between Mike Vrabel and Ryan Day. Maybe maybe I've got a tender spot in my heart that just sees the good and the positives and the achievements in some. This situation not being an opportunity for Ohio State days ago, I was thinking, okay, the expectations being what they are at Ohio State, Ryan Day gets one more shot. And just consider who gets fired after racking up 11-1 seasons over and over. This would be unprecedented in the history of college football. That being the case, part of the connection and part of the evaluation, I should say, is the comparison to what Michigan's doing. So if Michigan was mired in an 8-4 rut, but Ohio State was still going to New Year's Six games at 11-2, a lot of Buckeye fans wouldn't be happy with that, but we'd still have Michigan in their place. But that's not where we're at. Michigan has surpassed Ohio State, and Ryan Day is on a hot seat. I think Buckeye fans would be overjoyed with that. We know that Mike Vrabel, despite a 6-11 season, this year's done really nice things with Tennessee, and especially with not just the losses mounting against Michigan, but in the way the persona of the two programs has been the narrative of the physicality, and Mike Vrabel is that guy. And of course, he's a Buckeye. Man, that's a tough call. I don't think that they can pass on that opportunity. Yeah, I don't think they can pass on that opportunity for as much as if that's not available. I think Ryan Day deserves another shot. Shoot, the guy's 56-8, that he deserves another shot, but Mike Vrabel's not going to be available next off season. So go for it.
That's right. It's a unique window, but now in terms of the politics, and I did not write about this at Trojans Wire earlier today when talking about the coaching carousel and these scenarios, including Vrabel. But the thing I didn't write about is that, Gene Smith is stepping down as Ohio State's athletic director at the end of June. And so is he going to make a move this seismic, this significant right before stepping out? That might actually be the thing which prevents Ohio State from making the move for Vrabel. But of course, it does bring up the point that maybe Ryan Day, looking at all this, maybe he senses an out and maybe Ryan Day makes a move. And of course, to get back to my article and the scenarios, just consider this scenario. Ryan Day looks for his escape hatch. He goes to Chicago and the Bears, and he can reunite with Justin Fields. And of course, if he does reunite with Justin Fields, and I'm not predicting that he will, I'm just saying, if you're Ryan Day, this is a scenario you should be thinking about right now. You can go to Chicago, you get to coach Justin Fields again. And if you're coaching Justin Fields, that obviously means you're not drafting Caleb Williams. It means you're trading down from number 1, maybe to number 2 in Washington, maybe to number 3 in New England, and you can get Marvin Harrison Jr. So you could have Ryan Day, Justin Fields, Marvin Harrison Jr. all together on the same NFL team. And so if you're Ryan Day, I'm not talking about Ohio State, if you're Ryan Day and you want to scratch that NFL itch, wouldn't that be exactly the kind of scenario you'd want? I mean, exactly the kind of scenario other than, coaching Justin Herbert with the Chargers. But that's not realistic. That's either going to be Harbaugh, could be Belichick, could be Mike Vrabel. Like the elites, an elite coach is going to get the Charger job, almost certainly. If you're Ryan Day and you want that portal to the NFL, you want your chance to cut your teeth in the NFL, get a taste of it, because you know that these opportunities don't just come around all the time. Going to the Bears with Justin Fields as your quarterback and Marvin Harrison Jr. as your elite wide receiver, that's as good as Ryan Day could realistically, I think, hope for. Maybe like the Falcons, maybe something else, but to be able to coach the quarterback that you worked so well with in college, to be able to coach the receiver is an absolute stud, but wasn't able to be, statistically as prolific as he could have been because of the limitations of Kyle McCord. could be as good as it gets for Ryan Day in terms of chasing his NFL dream. So that's another scenario to consider in all of this. And so on a larger level, and for the USC fans who are thinking, hey, a little too much Ohio State talk here on the Trojans Trojan Conquest live show. Yeah, Tim's raising his hand. So let's bring it back to USC. Let's just consider the possibility that Ohio State and Michigan change coaches in the year that USC comes into the Big Ten. Holy cow. Wouldn't that be an absolutely crazy scenario with the two biggest names in the Big Ten going through changes, all while USC, and along with Oregon, along with Washington and UCLA, is coming into the fold. And just to be clear now, like that, so that's amazing in itself. But to kind of parse this a little more finely, it's obviously, to me, an advantage for USC if Harbaugh leaves Michigan. I think on that point, that seems pretty clear cut. But if Mike Vrabel does replace Ryan Day at Ohio State, that's not good for USC, because I think, and I sense, Mark, that you agree with me on this, Mike Vrabel would be an upgrade from Ryan Day. As great as Ryan Day's record is, wins and losses, I think Mike Vrabel is definitely an upgrade. So USC fans would not want that change to happen in Columbus, but they're definitely praying that Harbaugh leaves for the NFL, probably the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yes, Tim is wanting this spun back to USC, which, Matt, you eloquently did. I will just say that Ryan Day, reading between the lines and sometimes not even between the lines, seems a bit miserable at Ohio State. And this is where that whole dynamic can be suffocating, because there's no room to lose any games there. And Tim, remember that historically, this is going to be your number one rival in the Big Ten. If history holds true and Michigan comes back down to its typical level, then USC and Ohio State might own this conference.
Oh, he won't see Ohio State, but this guy right here is going to be seeing a lot of the Big Ten next year. So, again, we are earlier last week we had the Big Ten. Are we Big Ten ready? That's just one more reason. Just catch everyone up. A couple of people are saying, "What's going on with Maiava?" So apparently he was going to go to SC. He went to flip to Georgia. Now he's back to USC. So the people in the chat, they're asking about Jayden Maiava. He apparently is going to be going to USC. And there was another comment. I'm going to get back to these really quick, Mark. So we had, again, Danny, thank you so much for my congratulations. Danny's one of the newer. I had to update the members, you guys. Down there's the membership. We appreciate all you guys. We have a lot going. We're just gearing up. We're going to have live streams for you guys. We're going to have all kinds of stuff for our members. Megan, thank you, Megan. She's one of my awesome friends. She's from Australia. She's on Traveling Fool Show all the time. She's now a three-month member. She's a huge Seahawk and she's a really big Pete Carroll fan that just kind of goes to the Seahawks and to USC. So thank you, Megan, for that as well. Thank you for the correction, not 6'4", 6'5". And you did say he was a freshman. Great member of our community, Jeff. But I said he's gonna be a sophomore. Yeah, he's a true freshman this year. He's gonna be a sophomore next year because he played a lot.
Defense 247 Sports does list him at 6'4".
Oh, 247. Okay, I thought I saw it somewhere. Let's address this, you guys. So a bunch of people are curious about this whole thing. Jim Leonhard, for some reason, loves him some Prime, and the rumor is out there. And I think I don't know who said it, but it's a legitimate source. You guys in the chat, if you could tell me who was it that I think it was. I don't want to say the wrong person, but yeah. So there's some legitimate smoke out there that our buddy Jim Leonhard, who turned down a bunch of Big Ten jobs, wants to go to the Big 12. Apparently, what are your thoughts on that, you guys?
I'm speechless. That's crazy. Like that makes no sense at all. And one of the things, like I'm just trying to process this on the fly, but one of the things that happened with Deion Sanders last year is that he threw Sean Lewis under the bus. Like, he did not treat Sean Lewis very well at all. He gave him an in-season demotion, And Sean Lewis hightailed it out of there, as he darn well should have, going to San Diego State to be head coach of the Aztecs. Found a good landing spot. But boy, if you're Jim Leonhard, like, you want to work for Deion Sanders, who, first off, like, that season went off the rails, and we learned that that start that Colorado had was much more a product of the caliber of opposition rather than anything that Colorado actually did. I mean, Colorado had to do, some good things, sure, but, Nebraska didn't make a bowl game. TCU didn't make a bowl game. Those were sub 500 teams. And then as soon as things got bad, like, Deion threw his offensive coordinator under the bus. Recruiting didn't really go all that well. Colorado's still way too reliant on the transfer portal. I am really having a hard time putting the puzzle pieces together and trying to figure out why Jim Leonhard thinks that going there to Boulder is in his best interest. And, like, Colorado doesn't even have the style of play that Jim Leonhard, worked with at Wisconsin. Like, now, here's a note. Arizona lost Johnny Nansen, its star defensive coordinator. I believe the Longhorns picked him up. So, like, if there's a Big 12 school with a defensive coordinator job opening that would fit Jim Leonhard, it's Arizona, not Colorado. Like, now, I mean, that Arizona defensive coordinator job, that's a very attractive opening, because Arizona and Utah are going to be at the top of the Big 12 next year or next season. You would think that Arizona is going to be a prime contender with Noah Fafita and the other weapons they have on offense, with Jed Fish building that program the way he is. Okay, Arizona defensive coordinator, I could see Jim Leonhard springing for that. Like that, you could ride a rocket ship and get to the college football playoff, or at least a New Year's Six game. But Colorado, like, the air went out of that balloon, and the coach is a lightning rod who doesn't treat his coordinators well. That if Jim Leonhard's going to Boulder, that would be a shocker. Not a slight surprise, but a shocker.
Hey, really quick again, you guys, if you have not already subscribed, please do hit that subscription button right here. So you know when we're going live. We're trying to get to 5,000. If you're liking the content, we cover USC 2 to 3 times a week, and we show up randomly if there's big breaking news. So make sure what you do subscribe. Also, make sure you hit that notification bell. Sorry, Matt.
There is so much to chew on here that I'm going to continue down Matt's path that he's led us on. Just if you understand the landscape of college football and where all of this is headed and where the power brokers are, just look at the landscape of college football. What did we just see in the playoff? We saw 2 SEC, 2 Big Ten in the future. Then we see everyone who's just outside of the playoff, outside of Florida State, is all SEC, all Big Ten, Missouri, Ole Miss, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. Look at a preseason top 10 released by ESPN. Not that I'm putting faith in ESPN, but this would be a consensus across the board. The entire top 10 is Big Ten and SEC. That's where all the money, the revenue, the power, the attention is going to lie, first and foremost, from a big picture standpoint. So I would think you would want to put your work on display in those circles. Secondly, of course, I'm not going to lay it out any better than what Matt said about the treatment of Sean Lewis in the public arena for everyone to see was awful. And then on top of that, whether it's Deion drawing this and wanting this attention, which I believe much of it is, or just that it comes his way, you're just going to a place where that head coach is going to be the attention getter all the time, and not as a defensive coordinator you're looking for attention, but that program is just all about Deion. And then also, again, to contrast it to what Jim Leonhard did at Wisconsin and how he was able with those defensive performances to complement what they did offensively, that just doesn't seem like a good fit to try to field a defense and prove your value against an offense that is just going to be going a mile a minute and up tempo and going to be exasperating your your defensive effort. It just doesn't make sense on so many levels.
Yeah. Not to break the topic again, but Slap Happy, I'm so sorry. On Friday, Slap Happy left us a super chat, Matt, and I dropped the ball. So first off, sorry, Slap. You're one of the best supporters of this channel and the show. Thank you so much. A big fight on, that's his thing, fight on ladies. Thank you so much, Slap, for coming back after I dropped that super chat. And here's one for you, Mark. Oh no, Matt, sorry.
Yeah, so Adam, like we've been down this road, okay? It's like I'm not going to call for Lane Kiffin to be hired. I think Lincoln Riley making some good decisions right now with his defensive coaching staff, getting these pulls in from the portal at quarterback and defensive tackle. And in terms of USC to the Big Ten, look, I am Mr. College Football purist. If you made me president of college football, if you made me commissioner, grand emperor of college football, I would have the Pac-12 and versus the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl every year. Like that's the way nature intended it to be. And it's kind of ironic that we had Michigan versus Washington, a classic Rose Bowl game in the national championship. So like I believe there's a certain way college football should be. If you wanted to ask me how I would structure the bowls and the postseason, I wouldn't have a 12-team playoff. I would have a 1985 style bowl system and then a +1 after the bowl games. Like Miami versus Washington would have been the +1 in 1991. Georgia Tech, Colorado would have been the +1 in 1990. So Adam, it's terrible that the Pac-12 is dead. I hate it. It crushes my soul. Don't like it. But USC was offered a ton of money, and Larry Scott and the CEO group ran this thing into the ground, and they're at fault for what's happened. So I don't like USC in the Big Ten, but it's a move that USC pretty much had to make, and it's not USC's fault that the Pac-12 died either. It's Larry Scott and the CEO group primarily. So now we move to the Big Ten, and like it's not the ideal outcome that college football traditionalists wanted. And I do think that in 10, 15 years, after the conferences have collected these pots of TV money, I do think the Pac-12 will be reconstructed. I think that at some point in the 2030s, 10 to 15 years from now, I do think the Pac-12 will be reborn, but the conferences are going to collect their television money first over this next decade. So we just have to wait for that. So I don't like that the Pac-12's dead, but we now have to deal with reality in the Big Ten, and let's just hope USC can make a go of it.
And the reality is well, I mean, like anything in life, and this is a business, but even the universities are businesses. You have to either evolve, you have to adapt, or you die. And this is big business. The writing was on the wall for USC. I think the question was asked. I don't know. It was Bone or who was asked the question. They said, "Hey, so what we talk about here when they're talking about the Pac-12 and media rights, and then he basically said anything's on the table, meaning independence. Us going to a different conference, anything's on the table." And the fact is the model that we had for the Pac-12, because now it's all about money, television revenue, big business, markets, etc. This was going this direction. You can't stop the inevitable. And again, when you're sitting there on your life raft in the Pac-12, the sharks are circling and the Carnival cruise ship comes by, you don't wave goodbye to it. You hop on as fast as you can. And that's exactly what USC had to do, Adam. And one more thing, even if, which he's not, Lincoln were to leave, let's say that McVay retires, and the only one job in the world I think he would go to would be that Rams. He's got a young family. He loves the area. I don't think that's going to happen. But even if he were to leave, I would bet my bottom dollar what they did to Lane Kiffin. I'd pray if SC came and asked him that he would just give him the middle finger, because the way he was treated, I can't see him ever coming back to USC.
Yeah, Adam is a tremendous supporter of the show. He's called the last few call-in shows over on the main channel, and he presents some great topics. So what I'm wondering about this scenario is what he expected USC to do.
I think one point in all of this, Adam, is that, if USC was going to have stayed in the Pac-12, what did USC need and also deserve from the Pac-12? Uneven revenue share, right? That USC should have demanded and would have rightfully, been given an extra cut of revenue, like an acknowledgement that, hey, you're the daddy, you're the cash cow, you're the straw that stirs the drink. The other member schools needed to recognize USC's value and give the Trojans an extra revenue share compared to the other schools in the conference. USC deserved that, but the CEO group would not kiss the ring and bend the knee. So, like, if USC is going to be treated like dirt, and let's be clear, USC was treated like dirt so many times and in so many different ways by the Larry Scott era Pac-12. My famous, infamous example is Texas playing that, or USC playing that overtime game against Texas on a Saturday. And then the next game on the schedule that season, 7-8 years ago, whenever it was, the next game on the schedule after a primetime game against Texas, a Friday night trip to Pullman. Like, the conference set up USC to fail. Would never happen with Ohio State in the Big Ten. Would never happen to Alabama in the SEC. Would never happen to Oklahoma in the Big 12. But it happened to USC. Total amateur hour. Like no other prime conference actively sabotaged its cash cow, its bell cow program the way the Pac-12 did for USC. In exchange for that kind of clown car idiocy, USC at least deserved an unequal revenue share, not to mention various other things we could throw out there as well. And the Pac-12 would not give USC a breadcrumb. Sayonara. All right? This conference did not treat USC the way USC deserved to be treated. At some point, you run out of excuses, you run out of leeway, you run out of rope, and you have to move on with your life. And so, it's not as though USC is the villain here. That we have to remember that. The Pac-12 and the CEO group are the villains. And of course, we've seen from further reporting, what's happened at Washington and other schools and other chancellors and presidents throughout the Pac-12, and just how disorganized, sloppy, selfish they were, and how they weren't on the same page. Get out of there. Get out of there. Like, the Pac-12 is responsible for its death. USC is not. Let's move on with our lives.
And really quickly, just one more thing. So just to recap again, people keep making comments about Jayden Maiava. Yes, he has recommitted back to USC, and we are celebrating the 6'2", 237-pound Isaiah Rakes, who is now going to shore up the inside. So now we have our backup quarterback, and we're getting depth in interior defensive line. And if you haven't already, please do quickly hit that subscribe button. We appreciate all of you guys being here as always. Again, the show would be just Matt, Mark, and I sitting around talking to each other if you guys weren't here. So thank you all for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And just as a footnote to what Matt's talking about in terms of how a conference treats its royalty, as soon as Matt ran through that situation, it reminded me of just in 2020 during the COVID year, the Big Ten set down guidelines of how many games needed to be played to reach the conference championship game, and Ohio State did not reach that game amount. And then just a few weeks later, the Big Ten said, you know what we said, if you forget it, Ohio State's still going to go to the Big Ten championship game.
That's right. You roll out the red carpet for your bell cow program, and the other schools might not like it, but that's the way it is, right? Like, that's, some schools pay more of the bills than others. Like that's just doing business.
You guys, if you have questions, make sure you get them in right now. I'm kind of coming through looking, get your comments out there. But a couple of topics we haven't talked about yet. We've been gone for a couple of weeks, but the good news is Jonah Monheim has announced he will be coming back. That is a big decision that's going to really help out USC. He basically played anywhere along the line, and he's played right tackle. He's played last year. He played left tackle. We know that his future is going to be on the inside. He during the Holiday Bowl, he played guard. So his next move might actually be now that we're losing we saw, I mean, a big part of our success in 22 was how well Nealon played, Brett Nealon. And then Diedish did a good job last year, but he was a bit undersized. And we have a true freshman coming in Zandamela. He's a hell of a load, and he's, he's the top interior offensive lineman in the country, according to the services. He's a true freshman. That's a lot to ask of a true freshman to step in and play LSU on the road as a true freshman. So people have also talked about maybe Monheim, since he's, what is this, fifth year. So, I mean, for him to step in and play, he knows the line calls, he knows everything. So that might be a natural fit for him. We have a bunch of amazing guards that can move in, young guards from that freshman class that can slide in and play guard for us. But this one move by Monheim really solidifies it, gives Henson a lot of options. And so, again, Quinones is coming back. He also has practiced and played a little bit of center. So shoring up a lot of the problems. Matt and I gone back and forth a little bit about the offensive line. I said it was a lot of miscommunication. Matt was more, sometimes would say also maybe just not the right size. I don't want to misquote you, Matt, but we always argue about this here. I think that some of the problems.
I was more of a Josh Henson skeptic, and it's really interesting with Josh Henson that the tweaks he made in the Holiday Bowl really seemed to work well. And so on one hand, you could say, Henson might be figuring this whole puzzle out. He might be aligning the Rubik's Cube the way it's supposed to be. But of course, the pessimistic view is, what took him so long?
Yeah.
Why did it take that long for him to plug the right guys in at the right spots? So, and Mark, again, we haven't talked for 3 weeks. I think that going into 2024, not just the spring, but fundamentally the season and that LSU opener, to me, the whole gravitational center of USC football is going to be the offensive line. And that might strike you as a weird answer, given that the defense has been such a conversation point, with Alex Grinch holding the program back, and now you have this strong defensive coaching staff coming in. A lot of people might say, well, Matt, don't you have to focus on the defensive side of the ball? Well, I think that the quality of coaching has gotten such a huge upgrade with what's happened in the offseason. Let's also keep in mind, Taylor Mays coached the hell out of that secondary in the Holiday Bowl. And assuming that USC retains Taylor Mays on staff, I think that defensive coaching staff is set to the point that I'm not worried about the quality of defense we're going to have. So really, I think the gravitational center is the offensive line, because I think the defense is going to be significantly better. But you can only make so many assessments of a quarterback based on one game. I'm not sold that Miller Moss is going to have an amazing 2024 season. I am sold on the idea that you give him the starting assignment against LSU as a nod to the trust and the respect that he commands throughout the locker room from all of his teammates. I think he's earned that much. And Maiava now would be the backup who comes in if things go wrong with Miller Moss. So I'm not fully sold on Miller Moss. I do think he has earned the QB1 role, but that whole reality underscores the point. If the offensive line is right in 2024, if the offensive line works, if it functions the way it did in the Holiday Bowl, I think it all comes together, because USC won't be needing 40 points to win games. The defense is going to be better because of the additions on the staff, and now also with Rakes from Texas A&M, and there's also a spring portal window in which USC can beef up its defensive roster even more. You also have the Arnold brothers from Oregon State. You have the 2 UCLA guys that D'Anton Lynn brought in. There's a lot of solid reinforcements. And of course, for every defensive reinforcement USC has, the key difference from last year, they're not being coached by Alex Grinch and Dante Williams. They're being coached by D'Anton Lynn, Matt Entz, Doug Belk, and Taylor Mays. So I'm not that worried about the defense. I am worried about how will the offensive line facilitate the run game, enable Miller Moss to be comfortable in a clean pocket and replicate the kinds of performances we saw from that whole offensive unit in the Holiday Bowl. If the offensive line comes together, it's going to come together for the whole USC team. But if that offensive line does not make a significant step forward from what was a disappointing 2023 season, then USC is still going to be stuck in that 8-4, 9-3 purgatory, and will have a hard time making the playoff even with the expanded 12-team field. So Josh Henson, in my mind, he is the most important assistant coach on Lincoln Riley's staff heading into spring ball and the rest of 2024.
All right. Do we have anything else on the table we need to hit on?
I just had you forgot Matt Entz, but yes, that defense is going to be a lot. I mean, again, like you said, Belk, Entz, and Lynn is going to be. We're plugging in some players, but the new coaching staff is, I believe, like Matt just said, going to be the biggest catalyst for turning this boat around.
Mark, you asked me if is there anything to add. Well, let me touch on that coaching carousel piece that I wrote at Trojan's Wire. We do have to account for the possibility that Mark McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator, will take an open head coaching job.
I'm not listening to this.
Yeah, Tim's putting up the cross fingers.
I'm not listening.
We have to at least put this out there for folks, and it's not gloom and doom either. If D'Anton Lynn takes the Ravens defensive coordinator job as a consequence of McDonald taking a head coaching job, it's not gloom and doom for USC, because you can put Doug Belk, who's been a defensive coordinator the past few years at Houston, you can kick him to defensive coordinator. Matt Entz remains the linebacker coach and defensive assistant. And then you can have Taylor Mays coaching the secondary. That is a really good setup. Lincoln Riley, because he's hired 3 studs, and because he also has Taylor Mays there, and hopefully, like, USC is going to make sure to retain him. If D'Anton Lynn does leave for the Ravens, and I do not want to see that happen, but if it does happen, Lincoln Riley has the bases covered. There is an obvious plan B in place in which USC does not significantly lose out in terms of overall quality of coaching on the defensive side of the ball. So that's another important coaching carousel plot point to be monitoring in these next few weeks with the Baltimore Ravens.
But both of you and everyone in this chat would like to see D'Anton Lynn coach a defense at USC and see what that looks like.
100%, 100%.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate everyone being here at the Voice of College Football. We are back on track, folks. Monday nights, starting next week, Monday, 8 p.m. Pacific time. Tim Prangley and Matt Zemek from Trojan's Wire, although that's not the hierarchy there. It's Matt and Tim at Trojan's Wire, of course. But we so much appreciate both of these two guys holding us down here at the Voice of College Football USC. And as Tim has let us know a number of times here, when you subscribe, you hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. And that's key because these two will jump on any news that comes out as soon as possible. So follow the arrow, hit the subscription notice right there, and turn on the notifications.
Donnell Smith's asking about Rams D-line coach Henderson. Again, fight on Rusty, who from my book usually knows what he's talking about. He puts hints out there. He was talking about this being a possibility of the Trojans pulling in. But what a pull that would be. But again, as of right now, there's just rumors, to my knowledge, Matt.
Yeah, it's a reason to want the Lions to win that wild card game.
Well, another reason, because I'm on Rosgov there too, tearing it up.
That too.
All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at Trojan Conquest Live, and make it on back next Monday night, 8 Pacific time. Follow Matt's work at Trojan's Wire, and we'll all be awaiting Tim's initial work and what he's going to put out at Trojan's Wire as well. Absolutely.
And also, USC baseball starting up February 17th. Make sure you go watch number 10, Austin over and run around he set a record for triples last year. Kid's got a great bat and he's amazing out in center field. So go make sure you go check it if you're anywhere near. No, wait, hold on. They're not playing at Dado, right? They tore up Dado. So stay tuned where they'll be playing, but make sure you get out there and check them out.
So I think Tim has volunteered himself as our Trojans Wire baseball correspondent.
I'll be going to a lot of games, so I might as well, snap some pictures and write about it.
All right, folks. Our next broadcast here at the Voice of College Football is Ohio State Live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So Mike
Vrabel talk.
Yes, we might do that. Absolutely. All right, great stuff. Matt, thank you so much for making this happen. Tim, you as well. You guys are the best. Trojan Conquest Live. We'll see you next Monday, folks.